bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Dan Raviv. Also joining us is Matt Brodsky, global affairs analyst and senior fellow at the Security Studies Group. Matt, first to you. We've got these new round of sanctions on Iran, the toughest ever. Remind us how we got here.
Well, we got into a very bad deal under the Obama administration. We had sanctions that were like what we have right now, but also around 5 or 6 UN Security Council resolutions. So there was an entire international backdrop and structure for all of these sanctions to fit into. So now that we've pulled out of the deal under Trump, it's basically what the snapback of sanctions was called. And this is to target Iran's economy and to have it come to a decision that it's going to have to come to the table, address the 12 points that Secretary Pompeo laid out previously that have to do with Iran's nuclear program and its behavior and support for terrorism. And essentially now it's trying to see how the pressure that's going to be applied right now, how that's going to affect Iranian thinking, at least as far as the regime is concerned.
All right, interesting points there. But Dan, Matt calls this deal a bad deal, although U.S. partners to this deal said it was working, and some of those partners could be hurt by these sanctions. Isn't that correct?
Well, of course, we don't have enough minutes on Take 30 to defend or attack the nuclear deal of 2015.
Try it anyway.
But European countries, also Russia and China, are sticking with the deal because they say it has stopped Iran from working on nuclear weapons. Other people say maybe it stops Iran for about 10 years, but then Iran would rush to make nuclear bombs. Okay, so President Trump made the decision, right, this past May, walk away from the deal and reimpose sanctions. I thought it was interesting that Secretary of State Pompeo, when tweeting about this, not only in English, but also in Iran's language Farsi, didn't mention the nuclear issue at all. He wrote, for instance, this is Pompeo, Iran's regime has a choice: change its behavior and act like a normal country, or watch the escalating pressure continue. Pompeo also tweeted a warning to European countries, including banks and companies. Anyone who deals with Iran and violates sanctions will face harsh U.S. punishment. So the U.S. is really tough this time, going for a change in behavior. But as Matt suggested, it means that the U.S. wants Iran to come back to the negotiating table and come up with some new deal that would include nuclear, missiles, and bad behavior. Shayna.
See, Dan, you managed to get a lot of those points out there, even in the few minutes that we have. Matt, last minute to you. Pompeo has moved on. He no longer wants to even talk about the Iran nuclear deal. But let's talk about these sanctions. Iran's going to try to skirt them. So how does the U.S. enforce them?
Right. The key is going to be when it comes to the countries, the 8 countries that are still allowed to purchase oil from Iran, they can purchase it and the money is then put into an escrow account, which then needs to be used by Iran for humanitarian purposes, for medicine, basically for non-sanctionable type of activities. The United States is going to have to keep a very strong eye, a really tight leash on that money to see that it's not abused, because the Iranian people are going to be able to see that if the regime keeps importing, say, cars and other goodies or spending money outside on foreign adventures, instead of supplying with the medicine or the type of humanitarian goodies that it would be able to get with that type of money, then the people are once again going to know that the regime is simply not representing them. And that's, of course, what Pompeo has been talking about with his 12 points.
All right. Thank you for that point. Matt Brodsky, Dan Raviv, thank you both for joining us tonight. Turning now to sports here in the United States, specifically football. Our next guest made history back